Hello friends, welcome to Salesforce Group. In this video, we'll learn about the new conditional directives which are introduced in Spring 23. Improved conditional directives are LWC if, LWC elseif, and LWC else. Before this conditional directives, we were using if true and if false directive, but now it's the time to say goodbye to both directive if true and if false, because in the future releases slowly Salesforce going to deprecate these two old directives or old conditional directives. So let's see how to use these improved conditional directives. So before learning the improved conditional directive, you should have access to the Spring 23 pre-release org. If you don't have, I'll share the link of this sign up form. So once you sign up, then only you'll get the access. So if you have the access, let's go to the VS Code and let's create our component. So now I'm in my VS Code and my VS Code is connected to my Spring 23 org. At the bottom, you can see that. Now it's the time to create a new LWC component. So let's go to the command palette and click on create lightning web component. And here we'll say new conditional directive. So this is my component name. Hit enter, take the default path, and now our component is ready. So before learning the improved directives, let's create a scenario how we were using with the how we were using the old directives. So I'm in my template tag, and here first I'll create the lightning card. And in this lightning card, I'm going to give the title. So the title will be if true and if false basic demo, and just make sure it's inside the quotes. So that will be the heading of our card. We'll give some class. We'll say SLTS where padding around medium. We are giving a padding around our card. Now let's create a basic button, and to this button we'll say a label to text, and the button will attach a click handler. We'll say show text handler. So this is a button, and below this button what we're gonna do is our use cases. We want to show hello friends on screen if we click on this button. If not, if it's not clicked, then show the star. Okay, that's our use case. So till now what we were doing was we were using the old type of conditional directive, which was if true. We were saying if true, and the property name we were passing. So the property name I'll use show text. If the show text property is true, show this. If this property is false, show this. That's how we were doing, or till now we are doing basically. So now let's go to the JS file, and in JS file first we will create a property show text, and we'll initialize this property with false. So how it gonna works is as soon as this component load, this property will be assigned with the value false. It comes to the HTML, it start rendering from top to bottom. This check, okay, is the show text is true? It says no, and it will print this data on screen r star. Okay, and there will be a button handler. So what we're gonna do is we'll say on click of this button, I want this property to be shown. So I'll change this property to true, and as soon as the property get the value true, this template re-renders and it says okay, now the show text is true. It prints hello world on hello friends on screen, and it hides this asterisk. So now our component basic demo is ready. Let's deploy this. Before deploying this, we have to expose uh, to the pages or the targets. So here what I'm gonna do is I'll copy the targets that we have already used. So I'm going to expose this component to three targets: app page, record page, and home page. Based on your requirement, you can set those targets, and let's deploy this. Now it's deployed. Let's come back to our Salesforce org. So I already have a tab or a page for this Spring 23 features. I'll click on edit page and I'll drag my component to the page. So let's search our component, and our component name is new conditional directive. So drag it to the center column and hit save. Go back. And now you can see that the text is coming asterisk because it's hidden right now. Basically the show text property is false. As soon as I click on this, it update the value of show text and now it's visible, right? And to make it more generic, what we can do is we can create a getter, and we can say that the label should be dynamic. We'll say get label, and we'll create a getter here. We'll say get label, and whenever the value of show text is true, so getter always returns. So let's put the return statement, and if show text has a value of true, then what we want is we want a label on the button is hide text, and otherwise show text, right? We want to toggle the text. So if the text is hidden, then show text. If it's visible, then show hide text. And on the button, what we're going to do is we're going to toggle the property. So we'll say whenever you click the button, inverse the value of the show text. So on load, the value is false. So once it falls on screen, it will show text. And once you click on the button, not of false become true, the show text become true, and the label will become high text. So let's try this. It is deployed. Let's go and refresh the page. And now you can say show text. Okay, it's not yet refreshed. So let's inspect and clear the cache. So now after clearing the cache, let's click on show text. So it shows the text, and immediately the text of the button changed to hide text. If we click on hide text, it hide the text, and immediately the text on the button got changed. So till now we were achieving this using if else. Now let's try to achieve the same scenario with the new directives. So I'll copy this card and paste it below, and I'll say LWC if and else basic demo. Okay, we'll talk about the third directive as well, else if, but let's do the same thing using this LWC if and else basic demo. So in this, the change will be only we're gonna replace this directive if true to LWC if and remain same. And here what we're gonna do is we just need else statement, right? So we can achieve else statement directly. And for else statement, you just don't need to map any property. You just say LWC else. So how it gonna work is if this condition is true, if it didn't match, it will come to the next condition automatically. Okay, so let's deploy this and see this. I'll deploy this, and I can comment this as well to visualize it in a better way. I'll comment the first way so that it just map to the correct properties. So let's deploy again. So it is deployed now. Let's come back to our Salesforce, refresh it again, and let me clear the cache. To clear the cache, just do a right click and inspect, and then go to the refresh icon and do a right click on the refresh icon. You will see a option empty cache and hard reload. So now you can see the heading is LWC if and else basic demo. If I click here, it's showing. If I'm clicking back, it's hiding. So basically we just replace those directives if true and if false with LWC if and LWC else. So that's the basic change. Now you will ask yourself like why we are deprecating it. What's the purpose, right? So now I'll show you a scenario where LWC if LWC elseif or LWC else, or basically the new directives are more performance efficient over older directives. Okay, so this one also I'll comment it now. We'll copy this one. And now we'll go to the third demo. And here we're gonna say getter demo. So you already know we can map here property as well as getter's name. Instead of commenting the previous one, let's uncomment the previous one just so that it's visible on screen. But let's update this scenario. So here instead of button, what we're gonna do is we'll create an input field. So we'll say lightning input, and I'll say label country name. Just make sure it's inside the quotes, and we'll close this. And below this, what we're gonna do is we'll use the first if true and if false demo. We'll say if false and if true, and we are entering the country name, and we are saying if true, we'll say we'll check is country India. Yes, you are in India. And if it's not India, we'll just map it and we'll say no, you are not in India. Okay, so we have two properties. Let's go and create these two properties. So I'll create this property here. I'll put the comments so better demo. Okay, so I'll create a property is India, and I'll initialize this property with India. Okay, and instead of that, I'll say this property name as country. So the country and is India, and then we'll create this as a getter, and we'll say get country India, and we'll return that, and we'll say this dot country. Whenever if country is India, return true, otherwise it will return false, right? And we'll put a console here, console.log is country getter called. Okay, we need this to understand the performance issue. Okay, and now I'll map this property to a value attribute of the input field, and what will happen on load, this value will populate on the text field, and it will call the getter and check whether this value or this property has the value India. If yes, it will make it true and print yes, you are in India. And if that value was or this getter return false, it will show this, right? So apart from that, we can say on change, we will call change handler, and I create a change handler where it will receive an event, and we'll simply say this dot country. When you type something on the input field, we'll update the value of the country property. So we'll say event dot target dot value, and it update the value. So let's test this out whether it's working or not. Let's deploy it. And it's deployed. Let's come to our page, refresh the page. So now You can see the input field is populating with value India because we have initialized the value of country India, and then it running the getter and it's printing yes you are in India. And let's look at the console now and go to the messages and just see how many times it print the India. I'll close this and see. I'll just say, okay, now it called the getter twice. You can see it here. It called the getter twice, and one it called the getter for if true, and the second one it called the getter for the if false. So the execution happened from top to bottom. It reach here, it called the getter and check whether this is returning true or false. It returned true. Even after returning true, it comes here and it call the getter again. So basically, if true and if false, irrespective of the value, it call the getter, right? Now let's try to achieve the same scenario with LWC if and else. So I'll copy this card and I'll say this name LWC if and LWC else getter demo. You already know how to call this. So I'll replace this with LWC else, right? And this one I'm going to use with LWC if. So I'll say if this value match, then show this, otherwise just show this. Okay. And for this, what we can do is just to differentiate this, we can say is country Australia, because I just want to show you the difference of the getter as well. So we'll just changing it and we'll say country, new country, and change handler 1. So I'll initialize this with Australia. Okay, and we'll create a new getter below this. Okay, and we'll copy this and we'll say is country Australia getter called, and here in return we'll say new country, and if the new country matches with Australia, it call this getter, and the change handler 1 will update the value of new country. So we just did the same thing for our elseif demo, so that we can see how many times is country India getter is getting called and how many times is country Australia getting called. So let's deploy this, and it's deployed. Let's refresh the page, and now you will see that is country India is still getting called twice, whereas is country Australia is getting called once. And that's where the performance improvement comes. If you look at the code here, it's just like a programmatical if else. So it says, okay, if this condition met, I'll print this, otherwise I'll print directly this. But in this older way, we are still checking, okay, is this condition is true or false? Based on that, we were printing it. So to simplify the calling as well as to improve the performance, that's why this condition or these new improved directives has been launched, right? So now we know how to use LWC if, we know how to use LWC else. Now I have another condition, and before that let's see the demo first. So now I'll come here and I'll change, instead of Australia I'll say Canada. So immediately say no, you are not in Australia. Now I want another condition here where it says yes you are in Canada. So I'll copy this and I'll say yes you are in Canada, but I want a condition here that checks first whether you are in Australia. If not, then check whether you are in Canada. If not, then go to here. Okay, and that's where they have introduced a new directive, that is elseif. So we'll say LWC else if. It's similar to the how in programming or in JavaScript we use if else, right? In any other programming as well we use this concept. And here I'll say is country Australia, and here I'll put another getter. I'll say is country Canada, and we'll put the getter. Just copy this and paste it. And now here I will print the console, and we'll say here the country name is Canada. And let's deploy this. So we already put if and else condition, deploy. And now it's very easy because earlier we don't have this feature of checking if and else. We were always playing with true and false and nested true and false, right? So it's deployed. Let's refresh the page again. And let's look at the console. And now you see it's still called the is Australia getter only, because if I come here, this condition met, it never execute these two template block, right? But here, as I already shows, if you use the number of times you use if true or if false, it always call them. And now we'll come to our output, and here it's saying yes, you are in Australia. If I said Canada, immediately says yes, you are in Canada. And if I change it to something else, and Nepal, says no, you are not in Australia. So that's our default text that we are showing on the screen. So that's our improved conditional directive, and I hope this was helpful for you, and thanks for watching this video.